leads me on to another controversy within the corporate governance space, which is DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, where there's been a push for, greater diversity, in particular greater gender diversity onto boards. And there's been a backlash to that as well, particularly as it's become more politically polarized. And we've seen some of this with Bill Ackman's recent tweets, for example. So how should firms approach DEI when selecting their board?
Well, I think first let's ask, why is there such an initiative for DEI in the first place? So there's certainly some good reasons for this initiative, which could be that people were historically discriminating against women or ethnic minorities. So you could have two equally qualified candidates, but people might say extremely offensive things like women should not be in the C-suite, they should be doing different types of jobs. And if you have that attitude, then you are not only being extremely offensive to wider society, you're not hiring the best people because you're being blinded by his or her gender or ethnicity. So absolutely, as a bare minimum, there should be no controversy that we want to make sure that there's no discrimination against people from particular genders or sexual orientations or ethnic minority groups. However, where DEI becomes more controversial is that if you are willing to accept a lower qualified candidate because of particular demographic characteristics. And note my comment here, I am ideologically not pro or anti. I would benefit personally from DEI initiatives as an ethnic minority. So here this is not personal beliefs, but this is just an assessment based on the economics. That is something which is more tricky. Why? Because then you become less meritocratic. Now, there is the argument that people have, which is that if you're having a team of people, the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and it would be good sometimes to have a less effective person individually if he or she adds more to the team dynamic. This is why a goalkeeper in football doesn't score any goals, but any team does need a goalkeeper in addition to normal position players. But this is often based on really flimsy research. So there are studies done by the likes of BlackRock and McKinsey which claim that more diverse companies have better firm performance. These papers are extremely weak. They don't measure performance correctly. They don't control for other variables. My website maycontainlies.com goes through some of these studies and just highlights the elementary flaws in this. And so this doesn't mean that DEI is completely misguided, but it means that the very simple measures of DEI, just like demographic diversity, are really not capturing the full spectrum of DEI issues, just like you and I discussed earlier with ESG. So DEI is such a huge, complex topic. There's so many types of diversity. There could be gender or ethnic, but this could be socioeconomic diversity. There could be cognitive diversity. To reduce a human being just to are you a man or you're a woman is extremely reductive. This suggests that, okay, all men must think the same and you can't add another viewpoint if you happen to be male. And similarly, if you're female, then you're automatically going to be diverse and inclusive, when there could be white males who are very accommodating and some females who act as bullies. So just to reduce a human to this and to say, well, because you were born with this particular gender, you cannot add any inclusivity or any cognitive diversity of the team, I think is really problematic. And also this just looks at the mix of people that you have with an organisation, not whether the organisation takes efforts into making the culture more inclusive. So in one of my own papers, entitled Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, we take a much more holistic measure of DEI. We, number one, show that it has almost no correlation with demographic diversity. And then number two, we find that our broader measure of DEI is strongly linked to future financial performance, whereas demographic DEI is not. So this suggests that the demographic DEI that a lot of investors and companies and regulators are focusing on is hitting the target and missing the point. Again, people get lazy. They look at what can be measured irrespective of whether it actually matters.
I'm familiar with your paper, and I think it's a really interesting one, because it suggests that perhaps there's some lip service being paid to DEI, but while firms might be taking those positions, they're not making their own employees feel more comfortable. And my takeaway was that if you make your employees feel more accepted, as if they're going to be part of the corporate family, then you end up with better performance. Is that how one should interpret your findings?
That's absolutely right. So why sometimes some DEI initiatives are met with resistance is it pits, say, ethnic minorities against Caucasians. And so, okay, one is going to improve the statistics and another is not. Whereas if you're thinking about DEI as I have defined it with my co-authors, this is something which benefits everybody. So if you are a workplace which is inclusive, which is going to be accepting and also encouraging different viewpoints, it allows everybody to speak out. This is good for all employees rather than some of the current DEI initiatives, which is we need to hire somebody from this group at the expense of another group, even if the latter person is more qualified.